All right. So first, introduce yourself. What do you do?
Okay, my name is Parker, 25 years old. I am an EMT with Maricopa Ambulance. I'm stationed at Chandler Fire Station number 1, and I'm currently in the hiring processes with Gilbert Fire Department, Tempe Fire Department, Scottsdale Fire Department. And yeah, a little introduction about me.
All right. So our first question is like, what inspired you to become an EMT, and how did that kind of start for you?
First and foremost, I think, yeah, this one's a hard one because I feel like being an EMT is kind of just like introductory to being a firefighter. All firefighters are EMTs. And so that's kind of like a necessary. But I was working in the serving industry. I worked at a restaurant in Scottsdale called AZ88. I really loved it there, but just kind of grew tired of the late nights and just the customer service in that regard. And so I had my EMT. I'd gotten it pretty recently and was like, you know what, I'm going to do this thing. And so, yeah, just kind of went full forward, full speed ahead, and just became an EMT. And honestly, it's been something that I've really loved and really appreciated. And it's really helped me. So I think kind of what made me want to do that is I just love to help people, and like I love the customer service side of things, but also like the riddle of trying to solve a medical issue and trying to get that down is really exciting and fun for me.
Yeah. So it's kind of like start out. Did you just kind of go to like a hospital? How does that work?
So starting out, I did a lot of ride-alongs with fire departments between here and Gilbert, Scottsdale. I did them in Chandler as well, and so I kind of just saw that and was like, man, this is actually really cool, like a super cool gig. And then I ended up going to school to become an EMT. So it's 16 weeks, and it's pretty intense because it's just very quick paced. And yeah, after that, graduated in the top of my class, and yeah, I got my certification for the state. And after that, you have to take a test to become um, nationally certified. So
Gotcha. So you're pretty smart, you'd say.
I'd say I'm pretty smart, but I think that the hard work was a lot more important than the smarts.
Gotcha. And
Yeah.
so walk me through like what a typical day looks like for you. Like how you kind of start out, like what your
So
hours are.
starting out, yeah, so I work 24-hour shifts twice a week. So I work Tuesdays and Thursdays. I feel really fortunate to work that schedule. It's really amazing. I think it's pretty tough sometimes just because of I could be up all night long, and I feel like my sleep's always getting interrupted. So just kind of adjusting to that's really tough. But my day kind of starts out the same every time. I normally go get to work. I always try to show up 30 minutes to an hour early just to make sure that my relief is getting off on time and not getting a late call. I'm going to go out and check off my ambulance, make sure that I have everything that we need. So everything's stocked between, let's say, bandages or masks, or the oxygen tank is full, and just make sure that everything is in order so that when we get a call, we're not missing something. Yeah, I will set up my room. We all have rooms in the fire station. I'll set it up and get my bedding out and get my bed all made and nice. And then, yeah, I'll just start my day. I'll normally bring something to study throughout the day. So right now I'm learning about EKGs and how the heart works, the electricity inside the heart is working. Um, and yeah, I mean, throughout the day, I go to the gym and work out in the fire station, run calls, do charts. Yeah, it's kind of random, so really hard to like have a set schedule. But I know first things first, I always just make sure that I have everything's restocked and everything looks good on the ambulance.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you usually like what time do you usually get there? Is it early in the morning?
So my shift starts at 8, so I normally get there about like 7:30, just depending on the day.
Gotcha.
But no less than 30 minutes early.
Uh-huh. And so, can you talk about like any difficult calls you've kind of like had and like how you responded to it and like handled it?
Yeah, so I was working in Goodyear this particular day. It was probably I was asleep and we got a call at like 12:50 in the morning, so pretty early. And it was for a vehicle fire, and so we're like, okay, we're probably just gonna be standing, like we'll be doing a little standby. That's normally what happens, is we will just be on a little standby. Um, and so And so we go and we pull onto the freeway because we see that it's on the freeway, and we just see like a big black, like cloud of smoke. And so it turns out there was a big semi that caught on fire. Someone ran into the semi and caused the semi to hit the median, and he ended up getting trapped inside of his semi and burning to death. And so um, it was a tough one because I mean I didn't fortunately didn't have to like see him or look at him, but um, yeah, I just like remember driving by and I saw like his legs, and it was really weird. You know, you're not I don't really feel like human beings are supposed to or meant to see like things like that, but being in this career field, it's pretty difficult to not. And so um, yeah, I remember I just kind of felt pretty I don't know, I felt pretty nauseous and just like kind of gross at first, just because it was a pretty heavy call, heavy day, and just knowing that someone had died right there. And so yeah, I just went to the gym and I stayed in therapy. I just tried to be active and engaged in that regard, and just talk to my family. And my mom's a nurse, so she kind of understands that sort of stuff. And yeah, just not letting that like really affect me in that regard. So pretty hard sometimes with calls because calls are pretty scary sometimes. But yeah, just really trying to be transparent and open about it, and also just like honest. Yeah, so that's what I say
Yeah,
for that one.
yeah, that's great. That kind of like goes into my next question. It's kind of like how do you like manage the mental? Because I know it can be tough seeing all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the cool thing about working in a fire station is that like, there's a fire truck and an ambulance, and so by default you're going to have five other people, four on an engine, and you're going to have one other person on the ambulance with me. And so I just deal with it in that same way of just like trying to be open and communicative with the people around me because they all understand it. So it's pretty weird though because the general public doesn't necessarily understand, and that's totally fine. Just because not everyone's exposed to um, the same horrifying things, I guess. And so yeah, it's pretty cool because there's a lot of people around you that understand and that know what it's like to be in that same scenario. And so I just think being communicative and open, and also just like having really good outlets. So that's, my family and friends and a lot of good people in my life in that regard. And so, yeah, when the calls get hard, I think it's just after a really hard call at the fire station, we'll sit around the dinner table and we'll kind of just chit chat and share our feelings, and, just kind of really be vulnerable and open and honest. And it tends to help a lot.
Yeah, I get that. Just kind of like talking to just like someone that gets your experiences and like talking through that is definitely a big thing.
Totally.
And so I know there's a lot of like TV shows about being and like working as an EMT and stuff. Are there any like common misconceptions that maybe those TV shows give out that like just people think?
It's funny because I watch those shows. Like I'm watching Chicago Fire right now. I would say it's pretty accurate for the most part. Obviously, a lot of things that maybe aren't the most accurate, but yeah, I think that if you watch those shows, just realize that CPR is not as easy as it looks in those shows. That's something that I've noticed. It's a lot more tiring and draining, and yeah, it's a lot more interesting. Those shows just make it look super like simple and like they just come back immediately. It's like not the case at all.
Yeah.
Um, I say very rarely I ever get people back when they're in cardiac arrest. So yeah, that's a misconception. Um, I don't know. I feel like that's a tough one. I feel like there's not a lot of misconceptions. I feel like people are very grateful, and yeah, I feel like they are really appreciative of me and my work, and that's something that I don't take for granted. So yeah, I would just say, maybe I think people just think it's kind of like having a sleepover with your bros all the time, which kind of is in a way, but um, yeah, I would just say that that's probably the biggest misconception is CPR. It's really interesting. So
Gotcha. And so you said like being on all those like situations and kind of like talking through with your like buddies and whatnot. More like during the situations, is there a way like you think through stuff to stay calm?
yeah, I mean, like in a tough scenario, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, in those scenarios, I try to be just I tried to disassociate the fact that like, it's somebody that is in that state of mind. So I just try to be like really, I don't know like a proper way to necessarily say this, but like I go to a call where someone was in a car crash, like I just call them car crash. I don't really get too personal with them. I just kind of leave them labeled as what they are and why I'm responding to a call. That kind of helps for when things are hard and so they don't get too personal.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a little like hack that I've kind of learned in that way is just like, yeah, you can't get too personal with people because a lot of times they, if you do get too personal, it kind of can hurt you in the end and just like make you, yeah, make it a little harder to get over the calls. So
Yeah. So for people wanting to like become an EMT, what advice would you give them to like start that process?
I would just say be patient with it. It's a difficult process, I feel like, because it takes a lot of time to get established. It's also like a really big learning curve. So I mean, like I've only been an EMT now working in the field for like about 8 months. And so that's the thing is that yeah, it's hard. There's a lot to learn that you're never ever going to know everything. And if you feel like you do, then that's a problem. And so I would just say, like, if you want to get into this field, just go into it knowing that, hey, A, the money is not super great. And B, just know that like it's going to be just a continuous field of like improvement and growth. And I think that's something that is really attractive to me and like really exciting for me is the fact that I get to be involved in a field that's ever growing and ever changing. So
Yeah, definitely. All right. Do you have? Dang, that hit me. Do you have like any stories where you have managed to do CPR to get someone out of cardiac arrest, or just like mainly help people that have just like really affected you?
yeah, so I mean, a couple weeks ago we had we call them codes. So that's like what happens when someone goes into cardiac arrest. Um, so we had one, and I was kind of just like trying to figure out like, hey, what in the world's going on? So it turns out that this man was walking to the sun and just fell dead. No complaints, no symptoms, no nothing like that. So we did CPR on him for probably about 30 to 45 minutes, which was a pretty long time. They shocked him with the AED a couple times to try and get his heart back into rhythm, and he wasn't able to. Yeah, he wasn't able to. We didn't get him back, and so it's just one of those things. It was really interesting because it's like, yeah, we tried with all our might, and we did everything we could, but yeah, just sometimes it's not possible. And so yeah, just the one thing I know is that I'm super grateful for the opportunity that I had to be in a place um, where I could, show up and do everything that I knew how to do, and I did CPR to the best of my ability. And Chandler, we also have this device called a Lucas device, and so it's just basically like it does CPR for you. It's a super cool device. It never gets tired. The battery life is probably about 2 hours, so very very long time. But yeah, we ended up putting that on him, and it did a lot of CPR, and the yeah, it was those are interesting calls, and like it's just interesting because the guy just felt dead, and like he never had any complaints or symptoms, and his son was there, and super sad stuff. But I know that I did the best that I could do, and that's all that I could do, and so yeah.
All right. And so my last question is like, has working as an EMT just like changed your perspective on like life or how you approach things? And like, if so, how?
So this question is pretty cool because I actually, after that call and to relate to that call, I texted my family and I was just like, hey family, like I want to tell you guys about this call that I had. And I explained, just what I told you. Man falls dead and dies, just like kind of randomly, like spontaneously, we'll say. And I just told my family, I was like, this made me realize how short life actually is and, like how unexpected it is. I think the man that passed was only about 60 something years old and like he just fell dead. And so I just told my family, I was like, I'm here and like I just want to point out the fact that like this life is really precious and really short. And like I feel very grateful because I've been exposed to the fact that I know that life is very short, and like I try not to take it for granted anymore because like I've realized and I've learned that I'm not promised like anything, and that I could die in my own sleep tonight and I would never even know. And so just like the appreciation for being healthy and waking up and being able to breathe, like I've learned that breathing is in of itself just like a miracle. The process that happens inside your body is amazing. Your body does a lot of work just to get oxygen in your blood. And so yeah, I think just the mindset that I've gotten from being an EMT is just how appreciative I am of life, and just appreciative of being able to be healthy and in a place where there's really good medicine. And yeah, it's been amazing to have that mindset and that shift in reality, just because I feel like a lot of us feel like we're kind of invincible when, you know, I've learned quickly that nobody is invincible and people die very easily and very quickly. So
Yep. All right. Well, that's all the questions I have for you today. So thank you very much for getting interviewed.
yeah, of course, my pleasure. Thanks for having
Yep.